say that we are. This is Rock Nation. Pledge your allegiance.
I'm excited to talk about some of the growth that you're actually having and what you're doing. And I think recently we all saw you. We saw you on Salary Transparent Street, and you actually had a post that went viral.
Yes.
Now, I'm so curious in knowing how has that post actually impacted you when it comes to your mission and what you're planning on doing this year with Agile and Brunch.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that, Sean. Hey everyone, as you mentioned, Nimi here, aka Agile Bay. Honestly, that post I would say so. I was at TechSgiving, so shout out to Io and the rest of the founders at TechSgiving for having me. And I remember Hannah just saying, "Hey, you want to be interviewed?"
Yeah.
And it was very random. And I don't know if you can go back to the video clip. I was like not even prepared to be interviewed. It was so random. So it was one of those situations where it was like, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Because I remember just being in the car and getting a phone call, completely forgetting that I even did the interview, to be completely honest. And when I did the interview, there was no prior conversation on, hey, we're going to be posting it on this day. It's going to go out in this time. Or when do you want us to post a video? There was none of that conversation. But I knew that at some point it was going to be posted. I just didn't know when it was going to be posted. And I just completely, it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But anyways, fast forward to when the video got posted, I got a whole bunch of DMs, phone calls, text messages saying, hey, I just seen you on this platform, or I just seen you on Salary Transparent Street. And I was like, wait, what? And started seeing all kinds of like comments, and the agileandbrunch.com website was going crazy. My team was like, hey, what's going on? What's happening? Are you doing an interview? And I was like, oh no, actually I was featured in Salary Transparent Street, and literally I think as of current, the video's over at, I think, 300K views. And when I say that, moments like that for me as a Black woman in the tech space, it truly means a lot, because I feel like visibility is key for us, what we're doing. And I'm really excited for year 3 with Agile and Brunch. So this was really, really great. So thank you so much, Hannah, for the opportunity. Really appreciate that. And just looking forward to an amazing year at Agile and Brunch, honestly. And I'll talk a little bit about how we started and all the fun stuff too as well.
I'm excited. Agile and Brunch has evolved significantly over the last 3 years. Can you share the key milestones and how the community has grown since its inception?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't talk about the growth of Agile and Brunch without talking about Linkempower, which is the brainchild behind everything that I do. So Linkempower was my first baby. I literally remember starting Linkempower in 2020 with no clear vision, just wanting to start something. And I failed miserably at it, might I add. Since a lot of people out there think that I just do dope shit and it just happens to be perfect, I actually was terrible in the beginning, but I was never afraid of failing and pivoting. So when I started off with Linkempower, it was like, it just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was like, okay, this is going to be a global ecosystem. Definitely community, definitely going to be about connectivity, definitely going to be about networking, definitely going to be about empowerment. But what that thing was, I wasn't very clear on it. Yeah. So I just kept building regardless. So took a break from Linkempower, and then the idea is like, okay, personal brand came, started growing Agile Bay, because I needed to differentiate that I am the founder of Linkempower, not the face of Linkempower. So I just made a decision to come up with something to differentiate myself as the founder and as an individual for the things that are important to me, as my brand, personal brand, versus being the CEO and being the founder. So I made that decision, and I feel like when you start one idea, more ideas just kind of come, and it kind of just goes from there. So back to your question about Agile and Brunch. Agile and Brunch stemmed from the surge and the growth that I was getting from Clubhouse. Clubhouse was a huge component in just building a lot of things that I have right now. So when I was on that app, I was very intentional about my connections and the relationships. And then I remember just starting to meet more people of color in the Agile and Scrum space. So I remember fast forward to post COVID, I was like, you know what? It's a good time to see how we can have an event.
Mm.
And funny enough, I actually called Sean. I called him up. I was like, hey, Sean, I have this idea and what I wanted to get your thoughts about it. And this is why you got to be real careful who you share your ideas with, because people can easily tell you don't do it, or they're going to encourage you to do it. And honestly, Sean was like, hey, we jump in the bridge, let's go ahead and do it. And I was just like, actually, can you tell me let's not do that? Like let's take a step back. You're already doing like 5 million other things. Like, where do you have the time? But what I loved about our conversation was it was the extra confirmation that I needed to just go forth and conquer and start. So without a clear vision, I remember having that conversation with Sean, and he was like, yeah, let's do it, run the play. And he was actually my first sponsor. He was like, yep, let's do it. I believe in you. And it's really, really important to have people like that in your corner when you're building anything. So fast forward to going into year 3, we're going to the DMV.
Oof.
I mean, I'm just still like amazed at how quickly we've scaled. And how like the excitement, we talked about me going viral a few minutes ago, and that has also been a contributing factor to just how we're marketing this year. Our social media has grown, getting great traction, and then we have a couple of partnerships coming up that you guys will find out about really soon. So just be on the lookout. If you're familiar with Agile, and if you're not familiar, please definitely check out our website, visit our social media, and just get plugged in. We have a whole lot in store coming. I'm just really happy for the team that I also have as well that truly believes in the mission and vision of what we're doing with Agile and Brunch as well. So
Shout out to the team.
yes, shout out to them because Lord knows.
So I'm glad you mentioned, Agile and Brunch 2 years in a row was in Atlanta. Now you're going to the DMV,
Yes,
which is huge because we know that there's so many of us in our community that are up there.
yes.
That's where the country moves and shakes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're bringing it not only from Wakanda, aka Atlanta, but now you're going to Chocolate City. So it's really amazing to see.
Yeah.
I would love, without giving away too much,
Yes.
could you provide a teaser for the upcoming Agile and Brunch event in 2024? What can attendees look forward to experiencing?
Yeah, I would definitely say an elevated experience for sure. This is not a tech conference. This is not going to be a training or workshop. This is going to be solely focused on intentional connectivity with people of color in the Agile and Scrum space. Just imagine a room full of Black excellence, as I like to call it. We'll be recognizing key individuals, obviously Agile thought leaders, and just creating a space where people can intentionally connect and empower each other too. So I'm looking forward to the intentional connections that will be made, the relationships that will be built, the partnerships that will come from this, and even the jobs opportunities that are going to come from this too as well, because that's really, really important. It's what it's all about. Impact.
Impact.
Yes.
Love that. So one of my favorite things about you is that you introduced me to Agile. I didn't know it existed. Even working in tech and even working with project managers, there was a different level I was not aware of.
Yeah.
And this is an amazing community that you brought me into over the last couple of years and educated me. So you're definitely someone, to your point, since the Clubhouse days, you are a thought leader in this space. And being a thought leader in Agile, how do you perceive the current state of Agile methodologies in the industry? Are there any trends or challenges you think the community should be aware of?
So I remember our conversation from I think like last year. I can't remember exactly when, but we were talking about upskilling and just how right now you should be working on your personal brand. Your professional portfolio is going to be your value add. You should look at yourself as an asset. And when I saw the report, it was talking about over 1,000 plus people being laid off from Capital One in the Agile and Scrum world. It's very, very disheartening. But I do feel like there's a lesson learned there from about just upskilling yourself. Is not just about you being a Scrum master. So you've gotten you're now in this position. You've gotten an opportunity. You have access to learning. What else are you good at? What are your interpersonal skill sets? And I've been saying this for the last few years, actually, because I kind of saw this trend coming where we're going to have a lot of agile consultants.
Yeah.
It's no longer just we need scrum masters. We need people that are experts that know how to drive value. That's what it's all about. So when you look at yourself and you look at your skill sets and you look at your experience and everything that you be doing, the question you should be asking yourself, what is the value that I can bring in this space outside of just being another scrum master? Because guess what? There are a lot of scrum masters out there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that have the certifications. But when you truly sit down to think about where businesses are and the economy is right now, you have to think about, how do I upskill myself? How do I position myself where I am now a value add and an asset, versus somebody who is just another number, another employee at a company. So I would say right now the motto is upskilling yourself, adding value, and then sharpening your interpersonal skill sets.
I love that.
Yep.
Ooh, we could talk about that all day.
We can talk about that all day, because I'm like, that's literally it. Like,
yeah,
that's the play. So
yeah, that's the difference between Coca-Cola and just another soda brand.
Listen,
You know,
yep.
what does your brand represent? So, as I mentioned, you introduced me to Agile, and this is a dope community. But what you've been able to do with Agile and Brunch is even better. So, Agile and Brunch is known for its engaged community. How do you keep the audience actively participating? Are there any strategies you employ to maintain this level of engagement?
Honestly, I just I have a lot of crazy ideas. And I have a team that truly believes in the mission and vision of what I'm building. And I think it's really important to have people in your corner that really, really understand what you're about and what your values are. Because I feel like they take that and they 10x it. Like I always say this, that my team does the hard work. I'm just here having the nice conversations and making it look nice and pretty. But at the end of the day, there's work that's being done behind the scenes. Like even before we had this interview and everything, there were several conversations that I had with my team just to kind of say, hey, ahead of this is what's coming.
Yeah.
So I would say that just being strategic, and then also in pure agilist fashion, how do I simplify what I'm building, and how do I 10x it so that it can be sustainable and it can scale? And I think the core of just what we're building with Agile and Brunch, with Linkempower, is just community. It's really that simple. It's community. It's how do we create intentional spaces for other people of color? Because again, I'm just going back to 8 years ago when I first started. There's still a lot of gatekeeping. I'm not going to say there is still a lot of gatekeeping, which is why Agile and Brunch exists, because there aren't a lot of spaces where a lot of people of color can even understand what exactly is it that an agilist or scrum master or release train engineer or like, what do you do? So when we remove all the theoretical things that are out there, there's a lot of simplification in this. And I think a lot of it deals with networking, community, and just keeping a space where people can feel safe. I think that's the most important aspect, and just having fun.
So you just touched on the fact that you've been in the game for a while, in this space for almost a decade, and it's really a space where there's still a lot of people just now learning about it. And it's also a space where people have been in it for decades as well. Although you've been able to grow and really be known as a thought leader and an expert in the space at a faster rate than most would actually do. So I'm very curious. Reflecting on your journey as an Agile thought leader and release train engineer, how have you personally grown over the last 8 years? Any lesson that you learned that you'd like to share with others in your field?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of lessons that we can sit here and talk about all day, but I think for me, the one that really resonates with me is having an open mindset to pivot. I think a lot of people are afraid to grow. And for me, what I love about being an agilist and going back to even making the transition from sales, I was never afraid to pivot. I was never afraid to pivot. And I feel like that has been consistent in everything that I've done up until now, where I constantly sit down to retrospect and introspect and just kind of see, okay, what can I do to improve? What is it that I can do to be better. And I truly believe that with every move and every decision and every career advancement, there's been an area of opportunity for me to constantly pivot and to grow, whether if it's certifications, whether if it's training, whether if it's mentorship, whether if it's going to networking events or making myself uncomfortable. But I think having that mindset to constantly pivot has been very instrumental to getting me where I am today.
That's dope. You have to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable.
Yep.
So let's go back to what just happened. The
Mhm.
viral post. You were very open in your conversation.
Mhm.
And one thing that you really centered on was transparency.
Yeah.
And I love that word. How do you believe transparency can positively impact the Agile community and the corporate world at large?
Absolutely. I think transparency is actually something that we practice as Agilists. It's actually some of part of the core principles of what the theory of Agile is. For you to build anything or to build a team, there has to be a level of vulnerability,
Hmm.
and that has to tie into being transparent. So when we talk about transparency, it's being open to share things that you may not feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah.
Just because like, okay, if I say this, it may not go well. But there is a way you can build your relationship with your team to be able to have transparent conversations, so it doesn't seem like you are reprimanding somebody or trying to intentionally do something that's malicious. So when we think about transparency, it's also a good thing because that also transcends to the customer from a business perspective, because there are a lot of companies that um, maybe the quality wasn't consistent with something. So having that hard conversation and taking accountability and saying, hey, we were not consistent with what our mission and our vision says about our brand. It says a lot about who you are and its integrity. And it goes back to just trust. So transparency is such a key component, and not just from a business perspective and personal, but how it also translate into a team as well. So I would say that transparency is something that we have to practice as Agilists, because it literally is the driver of all things Agile. When you're having those hard conversations, we talk about psychological safety and all the fun stuff. There has to be a level of transparency that you have to be comfortable with, but there is a science behind it that you have to position it so that it doesn't come across like, oh, this is harsh, or this is me trying to reprimand somebody. And it comes from just having those intentional moments and those intentional relationships as well.
That's a gem. The level of transparency you have in your organization
Yeah.
translates in your customer experience,
Correct.
translates in how that product is.
Yes.
That's dope.
Yes.
That's dope.
It sounds really cliche, but when you think about it, it's the same way you would relate with your customers. It just makes sense.
Going back to what you said earlier,
Hmm.
we're now at a point where we can't just be employees.
Yeah.
We can't even just be entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
We have to be brands.
Mm.
And a brand essentially is a thought leader, someone
Yes.
who is a trusted voice in the space. So I would love to know, balancing the roles of a thought leader and an agilist
Hmm.
can be demanding, I'm sure.
Whew.
How do you strike a balance between those responsibilities? Are there specific strategies you employ to excel in both areas?
Yeah. So I would consider myself, if you were to ask me, what do you consider yourself in this space? I definitely would say, like you said, an agile thought leader or an agile entrepreneur, as I like to call
Yeah.
myself. Because what I've learned and what I love about being a lifelong learner in this industry, it allows me to expand outside of just being a scrum master or an agile coach. And the list goes on and on. I think for me, when I made a decision to pivot, I wanted to do more than
Mm.
just sales. So because I came in with that mindset already of, okay, I want to do more outside of sales, I allowed myself to organically grow in this space. So you're seeing me doing different things in fashion. You're seeing me doing different things like building a tech startup and, working for all these tech companies and so forth. But I feel like I've allowed myself to organically grow in that space. And I think I've also I also was intentional with building my personal brand, and saying this is who Nimi Bello is, aka Agile Bay. I am passionate about building, adapting, and enhancing teams, individuals, and businesses. So I think it was a mindset first approach for me, and just saying this is how I want to position myself, this is how I want to come in to this space, and this is how I want my brand to sustain itself and do the work for me and build other things as well.
So Nimi, thank you for this amazing conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
For one, where can they find you, and where can they find out more about Agile and Brunch?
You can follow me, Agile Bay, and you can check me out on all social platforms. That is AGILEBAE. And also for Agile and Brunch, you can check out agileandbrunch.com, AGILE and BRUNCH. And then you can check us out on our social platforms, Agile and Brunch, on all social platforms. We're pretty easy to find. And we will be live in the DMV on June 21st. So we hope to see you there. So check us out, agileandbrunch.com.
Get that ticket. Hurry up.
Yes.
Thank you.